Hey guys, let's not sugarcoat it. These remarkable techniques showcase the early mastery of construction and problem-solving skills that enabled civilizations to create monumental structures and infrastructures. Today, we're counting down 15 of the most incredible ancient engineering methods. Let's start with number 15, aqueducts. When it comes to incredible ancient engineering methods, few can hold a candle to the brilliance of aqueducts. In fact, aqueducts were a complete game changer in ancient life. Their innovation and ingenuity can't be stated enough. So what were they? Well, they're an elaborate system of channels, pipes, and bridges that were designed to transport water from distant sources to urban centers. The Romans in particular produced aqueducts of unprecedented design. Even today, we marvel at the intricacy and precision of this ancient engineering method. Engineers had to overcome geographic obstacles to ensure a steady flow of water. So how did they do it? They used something readily available, gravity. By carefully calculating, look at this aqueduct and you can see why when it comes to incredible ancient engineering. It's aqueducts for the win. Number 14, hypocaust heating. Alright, we're going to stick with the ancient Romans for this next incredible engineering method, which is not surprising since ancient Romans did a lot of really innovative stuff. With hypocaust heating, ancient Romans found a way to keep their buildings nice and warm, which provided comfort and luxury. Hypocaust heating was a method that brought living and comfort to new heights during ancient times. It involved circulating hot air beneath floors and through walls. It was used in various buildings, baths, and villas, but to pull it off, the ancient Romans needed to have a pretty deep understanding of thermodynamics as well as architectural engineering. The hypocaust system started with a network of hollow spaces or ducts built into the floors of buildings. Hot air was circulated through these ducts from a furnace or firebox found outside the main living area, and the furnace would warm the air, and then the warm air would rise through a series of flues or pipes embedded in the walls and floors. It carves buildings out of rocks in their natural setting. Now, to make this, ancient peoples used a combination of manual labor and primitive tools, including hammers, chisel, and picks. It was pretty hard work, but it's actually pretty ingenious. Skilled artisans would meticulously carve away layers of rock to create facades, columns, and decorative elements. And even though building these structures was a tough go, they achieved some pretty astonishing levels of precision and detail. Now, rock cut techniques were used by several different cultures around the world, but the most famous and most visually stunning example of this ancient engineering method comes from the Nabateans in a city called Petra. They carved tons of buildings into these rose-colored sandstone cliffs here, from temples to tombs and even homes. Similarly, the ancient region of Cappadocia, which is known for its fairy chimneys and entire underground cities and churches, continues to amaze all of us today. The people of Cappadocia, including the early Christians fleeing persecution, carved elaborate underground cities right into the soft volcanic rock. They created and despised civilizations throughout history, but some of the most notable examples come from the Inca in South America and the ancient Chinese. So what exactly is it? Well, it involves sculpting deep slopes into flat platforms or terraces. This allows people to maximize arable land in regions that are mountainous or hilly. It's pretty tough to grow crops on steep mountainsides, so terraced farming provides areas where crops can actually grow. One of the most famous examples of terraced farming hails from the Inca. Inca terraces, known as andenes, were constructed using stone walls. They filled the stone walls with soil to create flat, fertile little platforms ripe for growing things like potatoes, maize, and quinoa. Because of these andenes, the Inca were able to grow crops in the rugged terrain of the Andes Mountains and keep themselves well fed despite the harsh environment. Another cool example of terraced farmings are the Longji rice terraces in the Guangxi province in China. These terraces are carved into the steep slopes of the Dragon's Backbone Mountain, which is the best name for a mountain. They've been cut one rock at a time. In fact, road building is a cornerstone of ancient infrastructure development. It played a pivotal and crucial role in connecting distant regions and facilitating trade. Once road building came into play, there was suddenly an incredible interconnected network that spanned the continents, allowing people to travel, trade, and communicate much more frequently than they had before. It was no walk in the park building these ancient roads. They had limited resources and faced hostile environments, rugged terrain, and really bad weather. Despite all that, though, they managed to construct durable and reliable roads. To find the most iconic examples of this type of road building, we of course look to the Roman Empire. Roman engineers constructed a vast network of roads that spanned over 200,000 miles. These roads connected the far reaches of the empire all the way from Britannia to Egypt. Roman roads, known as the Viae, were built using a combination of stone paving, gravel, and compacted earth. They even included drainage ditches to manage water runoff. First, they had to clear slabs. The Romans weren't, of course, the only ancient civilization to build them. The Great Wall of roads from ancient China connected the capital of Chang'an to strategic regions. And the Inca Empire in South America also had an extensive network of roads called the Capacnan. These roads weaved their way along the Andean terrain and connected the sprawling empire from modern-day Ecuador to Chile. Needless to say, with the advent of roads, faraway cities were now way more accessible, a true game-changer in ancient times. Road building had shaped the future of entire continents and empires. Number 10. Canal systems. The importance of water was not lost on ancient civilizations. They knew they had to bring water from the source to where they needed it. Without a way to do this, people would be limited to living only along riverbanks and on the shores of lakes. But without a way to get the water where they needed, what was ancient civilization to do? Well, behold the beauty of canals, a massive breakthrough in ancient engineering. But ancient China took canal systems to a new level when they built the Grand Canal. The Grand Canal was built more than 1,400 years ago, and it stretched for over 1,000 miles, connecting the Yellow and Yangtze rivers with the capital city of Beijing. To call the Grand Canal impressive is a bit of an understatement. It remains to this day one of the most remarkable feats of ancient hydraulic engineering. This Grand Canal did all sorts of things, from transporting goods and people to help with flood control, providing water for agriculture. It was a massive undertaking. Huge amounts of land were excavated, locks and sluices were built to regulate water flow, and bridges and aqueducts were needed to navigate obstacles. And while the Grand Canal is easily one of the most extensive and impressive canal systems can be seen in many ancient civilizations, which proves just how valuable they were. Number 9. Inca stonemasonry. The Inca, a fascinating, complex, sophisticated ancient civilization that continues to kind of baffle us today. Some used this knowledge to create incredible structures. They took massive stone blocks and quarried them, shaped them, and then fit them together with precision. Each stone was meticulously shaped to interlock seamlessly with its neighboring stones. This created a tight, mortarless bond, and these surfaces were so uniform that the structures were solid. So much so that their stonemasonry rivals modern construction techniques. They incorporated features like trapezoidal doorways, angled walls, and recessed niches that further enhanced the integrity of their buildings. These buildings were so strong they could even withstand all that pesky seismic activity in the region. Earthquakes and other natural disasters were no match for the stonemasonry of the Inca, which is why there are still some examples of this method still kicking around today. Number 8. The Qanat systems. When you live in an arid or semi-dry region, an inaccessible water source can be problematic. Well, not if you look underground, though. Welcome to the wonderful world of Qanat systems, otherwise known as Qanat, typically dug at a slight downward slope so our good friend gravity could lend a hand. Along the way, they would also build vertical shafts to provide ventilation and access for maintenance if anything needed fixing. Once it reached its desired destination, like an agricultural field or settlement, it would collect in a vertical well called a qanat. From there, water could be retrieved using buckets or pumps, or the water could make its way to fields or buildings via a network of smaller channels or pipes known as sus, which branched off from the main qanat tunnel. Needless to say, these systems played a critical part in the overall development of ancient civilizations in the Middle East and in Central Asia, and the systems were so effective they're still used today in several parts of the world, including Iran, Afghanistan, and North Africa. Moving on to number 7, the step pyramid construction. So the pyramids of ancient Egypt are a source of amazement, but before we had the iconic smooth-sided pyramids, we had pyramids of a different type. These earlier pyramids were built using a method called step pyramid construction. This was the foundation. The mastaba was then reinforced with mud bricks or stone blocks, and there was a nice solid base to build on. Each layer of the pyramid was stacked horizontally, and the layers were called courses. The outer layer sloped inwards to create a stepped profile. The gaps between the stones were filled with rubble or mortar, so the pyramid was nice and stable, and this continued all the way up to the stone blocks getting smaller and smaller. The final layer was usually topped off with a small shrine or a chapel and various religious artifacts dedicated to the deity or pharaoh they were put inside. The Pyramid of Djoser, located at the Saqqara necropolis near Memphis in Egypt, is widely considered to be one of the most famous examples of step pyramids, as well as the earliest colossal stone structure in Egypt. This pyramid started as a mastaba tomb, but it was later expanded into a 6-tiered step pyramid. It's 203 feet tall and included a mortuary temple, courtyards, and subsidiary tombs. So, the Pyramid of Djoser with its stepped construction marked a turning point in Egyptian architecture. It's an advanced knowledge of materials, geometry, and structural stability. There's a lot to consider, such as the size of the dome, the materials to be used, and what the building was being used for. The shape of the dome is typically determined by a series of mathematical calculations and geometric principles, so designing these structures is no joke. It takes a lot of math. For ancient civilizations, they didn't have a ton of materials available to them, so they generally built their domes out of stone, brick, concrete, and later reinforced concrete. For a lot of ancient domes, specifically those built by the ancient Romans, the individual bricks or stone that were laid in a series of horizontal courses, with each course slightly smaller in diameter than the one below it. They were then carefully shaped and fitted together to create a smooth, seamless surface, and then mortar or other binding agents were applied to stick the stones in place. And as I mentioned, the Pantheon is one of the most famous examples of this. It was built by the Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century CE. It features a massive concentric dome, which spans over 142 feet in diameter. When it comes to ancient engineering methods, some methods are on the side of fun. Mesoamerican ball courts were a prominent feature of ancient civilizations like the Maya and the Aztecs. These were venues that were used by elite societies for ritualistic ball games. These ball courts were characterized by their distinctive architecture, and they played a really big role in ancient culture. For example, most ball courts were constructed in a rectangular shape with long, narrow playing alleys. These alleys were then flanked by sloping walls or platforms on either side, and the ends of the court often featured stone rings or hoops. These hoops were then put up high on the opposing walls, and to play, players would attempt to pass a rubber ball using only their hips or elbows. Some of these courts were really big, measuring over hundreds of feet in length. The biggest ones were found in the biggest ceremonial centers and royal palaces. One of the most famous examples of these ball courts can be found at the ancient Maya site of Chichen Itza. The Great Ball Court at Chichen Itza is one of the largest and best preserved court in Mesoamerica. It even hexed in a stepped fashion to create an arch shape. This provided structural support and stability without the need for any keystone blocks or mortar, plus it looked pretty cool. The corbel arch is also known as a false arch or corbelled arch. It's actually pretty complicated. By definition, it relies on the principles of cantilevering, where successive layers of stones or bricks are offset slightly inward with each layer, gradually losing the gap until the two sides meet at the apex. As you can see, figuring this out wasn't for the faint of heart, and the fact that ancient civilizations were able to do this is pretty cool. One of the earliest known examples can be found in the ancient Egyptian tombs at Saqqara. These tombs date back to over 4,500 years ago. They were built with corbelled stone ceilings, and these ceilings spanned the burial chambers. The ancient Maya civilization of Mesoamerica also employed corbel arch construction. From ceremonial temples to palaces to tombs, Mayan architects used limestone blocks to create these corbel vaulted ceilings. These arches were versatile and durable, and the fact that anything that was designed to get through fortifications can be classified as siege engineering. However, over time they realized that some things just work better than others, and the things that work quickly became the go-tos for warfare. Obstacles were things like city walls, fortresses, and castles. To employ and create this type of engineering showed that the ancient people had a pretty strong grasp of things like mechanics and tactics. One of the earliest known siege techniques employed was the battering ram. It was a large wooden beam with a metal head or tip that they would use to repeatedly strike against the walls or the gates. They'd swing the ram back and forth until it broke through. Another common method was the siege tower. This was a tall wooden structure that was mounted on wheels or rollers. It was pushed up to the walls of a city to provide cover for assaulting troops. Siege towers usually had ladders, ramps, and platforms where soldiers attacked their enemy on the walls, or they could bore boiling hot oil over them, or even send down a slew of projectiles. And catapults were highly effective, since they were carrying. Throughout ancient Greece, from the theaters of Athens to the temples of Delphi, acoustic engineers showcase a highly sophisticated understanding of how to optimize large spaces. One of the most famous examples of the Greek acoustic engineering is the Theater of Epidaurus. This bad boy of acoustic engineering is located in the Peloponnese region of Greece. Even the faintest whisper can be heard clearly by audience members seated in the highest tiers of the auditorium. So why was it so effective? Well, the exceptional acoustics of this theater are attributed to several factors. The first is the shape of the seating area. The second is the design of the stage and the orchestra. And the third is the use of natural materials. At a closer look, the curved shape of the seating area, for example, helps to focus sound waves towards the center of the theater, and the steep incline of the tiers prevents sound from dissipating. Other examples of this stellar sound space that are utilized highly effectively are the theaters of Dionysus in Athens and the Odeon of Herodes Atticus. But it wasn't just used of ancient engineering. The Great Pyramid of Giza, anyone? Look at these ancient pyramids, and it's easy to see why this engineering method was so incredible. It showcases remarkable skill and ingenuity of civilizations, but let's be real, when it comes to pyramids, the ancient Egyptians have the stronghold on pyramid construction. The beauty of them lie in the precise geometric proportions. In fact, those proportions were so precise they continue to make us curious even to this day. To build the pyramids, they had to quarry massive stone blocks and then transport them, which is a whole different topic. But once the stones were at the site, they had to stack them precisely and accurately to create the massive, smooth-sided structures we have today. So they had to accurately form these blocks to the exact sizes. They need to transport them and then fit them into the pyramid. These stones were meticulously stacked and aligned from the core structure of the pyramid. For famous examples, well, you really don't have to look any further than the Great Pyramid of Giza to see pyramid engineering at its finest. The Great Pyramid of Giza, constructed during the